I'm Alexy Khrabrov. I'm an AI community architect at Neo4j, a graph database company. Who heard about Neo4j? Most people. Excellent. So, and I wear many hats. I like hats. So I'm a founder and organizer of Bay Area AI, which is the longest running, deepest technical AI meetup in the world, physically run for 15 years in different locations in the Bay Area. Before COVID, we invaded 100 companies at least in San Francisco. And I also run a conference called AI by the Bay. So conference is under By the Bay brand. So this is actually the original home of Scale by the Bay. We discovered this venue. I'm Oaklandish. I live 10 minutes from here. So we pioneered this venue. So Pete follows us basically to this amazing place. We're back in November. So I just said a few things about me. So this is kind of many things. Basically bringing community and people together around technology, right? So I've been doing this for more than a decade, and I'm a software engineer. I worked at Amazon, and so I like programming. I'm hands-on, and I found that this is the best way to engage developers. So just pick topics you're passionate about, which are interesting, and build technical communities. So I take it to the next level. I don't only build open source software, I also build open source organizations. If you change jobs, you should take your projects with you. You should also take your friends and your colleagues and your social structures with you. So I started open source science at NumFocus, where I'm the founding chair. I started generative AI Commons at the Linux Foundation, which is a part of LFAI and data. And I also co-founded AI Alliance when I was at IBM. Which is IBM, Meta, and 150 other companies. So, I brought Neo4j into the AI Alliance when I left IBM and went to Neo4j. I can still work in the AI Alliance as a co-founder, and I can still basically work in the same structures, same working groups. So I highly encourage kind of folks to, take your open source activity to the community, build structures that will persist, all right, when we move around, because people generally don't change. Like the company labels change, your ideas don't change. And as I mentioned, I'm the founder and organizer of Meetup and the conference. She will be here in November. And I'm also amateur/professional photographer. Have a whole bunch of photos in the cloud. And my ratio of keys to cats to dogs is 4 to 2 to 1. So Gen AI, right? Now this is a talk about open source AI and how to approach it from the community perspective. So Gen AI is very fashionable. This is a handbag in the shape of H100. You can buy it for $1,000 on eBay, right? It's fashionable accessory, much cheaper than the original thing. We kind of see these flashy things, right? We talk about LLMs and agents and anything. I think it's very hard to find anybody who knows how it all fits together, right? Like we're kind of a blind man sensing an elephant. So you go to any event like this. In one talk, in one track, it's storage. In the other, it's APIs. In the other, it's natural language processing. Like, where do you get the cohesive picture? So the motivation for our collaboratory is some kind of theme. Like, let's select a theme. We cannot really do a map of everything, but we can pick a theme. So at Neo4j, we are known for building knowledge graphs. We've been doing it for 2 decades. And so the community, which kind of figures out how to represent and store knowledge, is a very reasonable place where to kind of start stitching together different things. So what we found at Neo4j that we integrate with all the cool kids, right? Neo4j is solid enterprise scale graph database. However, if you look at LangChain, Llama Index, Milvus, Weaviate, Pinecone, all of them built integration with Neo4j because the customers actually store a lot of useful data in Neo4j. And so what we find is that we're in a very nice position where kind of we are this graph database layer. We don't really compete with anybody because, kind of it's category defining database. So we're in a position where all our AI things is open source and we don't sell them. It's just there. So I'm in a DevRel team. Everything we do is on GitHub is open source, right? And you can download the free version of Neo4j, which is enterprise grade, or you can download the open source version of it, and you can just play with all of this stuff. So it's kind of a lot of fun. So what we propose is let's structure the knowledge flow of how knowledge flows through an application, right? And if you look how we acquire data, what happens to it, and what kind of the outcome is, we can say that data basically there is some kind of structured input. When you talk about unstructured data, it does not stay unstructured. It gets somehow kind of grounded to some kind of vectors or graphs, right? So the data is acquired, and a very typical example by friends and colleagues from IBM have this project called Docling. Who heard about Docling? So Docling is a best PDF parser in the field now. At some point it was trending on GitHub like crazy. So my friend Peter Starr at IBM Zurich leads that team. And so they basically parse PDFs. PDFs are very complex beasts. I used to be chief scientist in a PDF company, and so they say PDF is where data goes to die. PDF represents the semantic structure of the document. So if you extract the structure properly, you not only extract the text, you extract the hierarchy of topics. So you have to preserve it. So now you have structure. Instead of losing it, keep it, present it in something that with structure can be reasoned about. So I personally love Pydantic. Pydantic was downstairs. Pydantic is going to keynote my conference because I believe that this is the major contribution to Python data ecosystem, representing structured knowledge in a way that is valid, validating it and keeping it that way is very important. And then you're ready to do something. There are things like structured output, which became very popular. Structured output tells LLM not to just give you a blob of text. It tells it to give you a structured record, maybe JSON, maybe XML, maybe some typed in some typed language. And not only should it be syntactically correct, it should also have some semantic invariance. For instance, if it's a receipt, it should have a bunch of fields. If the numbers, they should all add up in the end, right? So you give the LLM a constraint, and the constraint corresponds to the types you want in your outcome space. And the outcome space can be a robotic movement, right? It can be a document, it can be something, some actuation, some device. But generally speaking, knowledge between all the stages should not be lost. If you have structure to knowledge, you should transform your records, right? And when you transform them in typed languages, parlance, you basically keep invariance, right? So the data remains valid. And coming from typed language background, I think it's very often lost on kind of the folks who do AI with Python because they usually do not come from software engineering backgrounds. And so it's very important, right, to connect to kind of software engineers who have all these values, right, kind of consistency, validation, permeating their stack, and that will make your AI application safe and compliant. So now OAKS is this kind of techno-social project. So we have all these partners, and so we form kind of loosely defined confederacy where we can say, here is Neo4j and here is LangChain. We have a production package maintained by both companies. You can go download it, support it, and it does GraphRAG, which is reasoning, RAG with graphs, right? In addition to regular vector, you can also get the whole graph structure, right? But it's important that, so we have this now pairwise collaboration. So we can now think, how do we structure these integrations, right? In different parts of GenAI stack. So I mentioned input, I mentioned transformations and actuation. There are other things, for instance, AI memory. So we put it in there maybe 6 months ago, and now AI memory is all the rage because agents, when they work on different parts of your data, they need to store their knowledge, their findings, their state. They need to store it somewhere. So it turns out that knowledge graph is a very natural way to represent agentic memory. So we have a course with deep learning AI on GraphRAG, and the sequel to that course is Agentic GraphRAG, where agents go out to the world and they store their stuff in this knowledge graph. So basically, check it out when it will come out soon. Now, what we also decided to add to OAKS, in addition to just kind of a landscape and collaboration with partners, when MCP server again became all the rage, we at Neo4j built one immediately in December last year. And what we decided to do, we're going to do a knowledge graph of all the MCP servers, which are interesting and useful. There's a lot of problems with MCP protocol right now. It does not type its outputs, so it's not really composable in function programming standard because LLMs are flexible. You can say, give me a graph, give me a text, right? But for most chains, for most call chains, there will be standard outcomes of MCP servers. So we could actually type the most typical scenarios. So this is what we're out to do, to map all of them. And we can throw in the agents as well. And when IBM does ACP, we'll support ACP and MCP and A2A, right? So agent and server, knowledge graph, AskG, that's a part of OAKS. We're building it. And the way we're building it, we're using something called Croissant. Who heard about Croissant? Croissant is a metadata format for ML, just came out last year. It's Google and a dozen other contributors. And it's basically metadata for data sets used in AI. It's a rich JSON schema, and you can attach them to data sets, you can edit them. And there is a next version of that called semantic croissant. So semantic croissant adds ontologies to this metadata. So now you can have multiple croissant servers. Let's say somebody runs automotive ontology, and they will be responsible for doing the most representative ontology for cars. And then you can use that to classify MCP servers in that space, right? So somebody really needs to go in and really understand, like, out of all these thousands of tools, which one is used when. So we're going to give LLMs a way. We're going to give them a knowledge graph that will map them into an ontology. And if you need to do an application in automotive space, you can go find who has this ontology, and then you can use this ontology to find the servers and understand what it is that they're actually providing, right? Because you need to describe the capabilities of all these tools. So we set out to do that under OAKS. It's a techno-social kind of process. So we invite folks very early in design stage. So we're keeping it kind of small and tight to a group of experts who know how to do graphs and ontologies. If you're one of them, you should join us. Generally speaking, if you have open source parts doing something in AI, we want you to add yourself to our landscape, right? And if you have MCP servers and agents, we want you to add them to our ontology. And then we will want people to build composable applications. And once they build them, we can actually do collaborative filtering. We can understand what are the most typical flows through these apps, and then we can recommend them to others. So that's kind of our plan for OAKS. And this is the conference. This is the shot from my conference, which, we like to color this room red. So we're gonna come back in November. So really, invite you to check out that. And here are all my coordinates. So my community email, my Neo4j email, and check all this out and contact me in any way you like, and add yourself to OAKS.